Hi, this is Shondell Joyce. Welcome to Beginning Oil Painting of a New York Bridge. First, I'm starting off with some thinned down raw umber and a thick brush and lightly sketching the subject in place. I'm basing this on a value sketch I did and a color study. You'll notice in the value sketch I rearranged the photo a little bit to make it more interesting. So my palette is raw umber, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow light, and titanium white. I'm starting off with some pretty thick brushes, taking a little bit of the cadmium yellow and white and underpainting the sky. I want the lightest light to be behind the hill where the sun is setting. In addition to the cadmium yellow light on the brush, I'm adding a little bit of cadmium red medium and making the sky a little warmer and orangier. Orangier is the technical term. I'm going to go ahead and add this as water reflection, as an underpainting. That way there'll be a little pop of color peeking out. Next, I'm using a clean brush, moving up to the sky, using some cerulean blue. I often check this on my reference photo before I apply it to the canvas, just to make sure I have the right value and tint. Next, I'm using a rag to create a transition between these two colors. I don't really want to mix these on the canvas. I'll come up with an olive drab that isn't the prettiest color for the sky. In between them, I'm putting a light blue. So this light blue is mostly white. It's more of a steel gray color. And it will help add a buffer between the two colors. Next, I am thickening up my yellow with some of the white. And I'm applying it more thickly on top. Doing the same thing with some of the orange color. This is the second application. Remember, fat over lean. You want to have something thin down on the canvas when you start, and then add a thicker application of paint later once that dries. So this is the thicker application of the sky color. I'm mixing a little alizarin crimson in with the cerulean blue to get that beautiful light lavender color in the clouds. And I'm using it as a shadow color. If I make a mistake, I lift up with a rag dipped in solvent. Next, this is alizarin crimson applied thinly just to the tip of a dry brush. And this is a dry brush technique for the clouds. I'm trying to keep the clouds very horizontal as I get down towards the horizon. You could also use a sponge or a fan brush to get that same effect. So I'm demonstrating both of them here. Fan brushes work great, but nothing beats having a crappy old brush. So I'm going to use the fan brush to smooth it and then come in with a little touch of light on a cleaner, smaller half-inch brush. And that little touch of light is like a silver lining right around the edge of the clouds. I'm brushing that in, again, dry brush technique, very thin, and using the fan brush just to soften some of the edges and pull it into the cloud. Now it's starting to look a lot more like the sky. I'm intuitively going around and softening edges here and there, adding a little bit of blue on the horizon underneath the bridge. This is definitely visible in the photo reference. I'm not sure if I would add this to a future painting. I always test and mix on the reference too. I'm mixing raw umber with some cerulean blue for the color of the distant hills. I'm using a pretty crappy brush to apply this so that the overlap is textured and creates the illusion of a tree line. When you make a horizontal stroke with it, you still get a straight line. But I like having that brushy texture along the top of the hill, which mimics the trees over the river. I toss a little bit of the cerulean blue in there too to cool that umber and to push it back into space, because warm colors come forward, cool colors recede. Next, I'm reflecting that landmass in the water by using the same brush and the same colors and just applying the dark close to the horizon and then spreading it further apart as I move down in space. So I'm also making sure that the waves are spread further apart the closer they get to the bottom and are closer together towards the horizon. Next, I'm using a tool or the back end of a brush to carve out where the bridge is going to go and then painting it in with one shade lighter than the hill in the distance. Notice that the bridge where it overlaps the sky is darker, so I'm using umber for it and a mole stick to steady my hand as I apply it. I'm going to use that same dark color for parts of the bridge, and I'll come back and clean it up by negative space painting later. But you can see where the sky silhouettes the bridge, it's darker. I'm reflecting that into the water, and where the sky comes through the bridge, I'm using negative space and applying that with a small brush. Now I'm cleaning up the edges with some of the sky color in the background, and I'm going to create some texture along the bridge to perforate it and make it open so that it's not just a big solid mass. And this will create the illusion of light coming through it. Next, I'm using a razor blade dipped in cerulean blue to make the thin lines of the supports on the bridge. And this is more for texture than anything else. The razor blade is an X-Acto blade, which I happen to keep just for this process. It's a good use for old worn out blades. Next, I'm adding a little warmth in the water reflection, and I'm concentrating more on the water. I'm going to add a little more texture to it, making sure that the bridge looks real from a distance, and put a few waves spread further apart on the bottom of the composition, and a few highlights on those waves as well, cleaning up any loose edges. And that's pretty much my story, and I'm going to stick to it. If you enjoyed this painting, check out my website where you can register for weekly online painting classes.